Alright guys, so this is logging. I'll try to make it quick. So I'm not gonna go over how to log because it's just like print statements, and pretty much I can go over it pretty much. Usually in your tutorials you see you import logging, but since we make specific configurations, I want you to actually import logging from this folder. So in every service it has this folder config, which has like database config, rabbitmq config, and log config. So I actually want you to import logging from config instead of like the tutorial show import logging, right? So when you do that, you log as usual. You can do a debug log, a higher level info log, and even a higher level error log. And in the environments file here, so if you go to the bottom of the project, you can see you can set the log level. If I set the log level to debug, it shows me everything that's a debug log and above. So like info logs too and error logs. If I set it to error, it only shows me logs of errors. Right. So now how to actually view those logs. When you're running it locally, all you have to do is run it locally and then it just follows the logs. So just like Ralph showed you, if you want to say I want to run the image management service locally, I do exactly what he said. Go to the folder and run the main.py, and you see it's printing out the logs and it follows the logs. So if something happens, okay, it's running locally here now, so the RabbitMQ is not connected. But if something happens, as you can see, it's updating the logs live. Well, what if you want to display the logs in Docker? First, I actually have to be running the Docker containers so that they can actually be logging something. So let's start them up. Docker compose up. I want to start up the relay API and the image management service. And attaching. I can see they're already printing out logs here. You see, when you start up the containers, it prints out the logs. Uh, and it updates live. So if something happens, if I send the message to the relay API, the relay API logs it because like that we made the log statement to the relay API, and also when the image management is receiving it, it also logs it here. So you see the log came in. But it's kind of messy because it's receiving logs from everything. We don't really like that. Uh, Also, like if we don't like, you can't really use your console here anymore because like the logs are taking it up. If you want to start a quick aside, if you want to start up your containers but without displaying logs, just add the -d flag to it. It runs it in detached mode, right? But back to how do we actually display individual logs, not this mess that is here that is displaying everything. We do Docker logs and then the name of the service. Say I want to display logs from the relay API. I do Docker logs relay API. It displays all the logs from the relay API. It just gives me all the current logs. It doesn't update me on anything else. See, I'm free to use my console. But if I actually want to follow what the logs that are happening, I do the exact same thing. Docker logs relay API and then do -- follow. I use the follow flag. Now, if anything new happens, like say I post this, the logs come in. You can see sent message, and it shows me the message that was sent. Logs are very helpful uh, because they're very helpful for debugging. So let's look at. So say I want to figure out where this log was sent. I see that the rabbit wrapper that I created, which is its own separate repo, received a log. I can see this is the message. Say I want to find out where in the code was this log received. I can go up, look. Oh, I know routes. Routes is actually because right now we're following the logs from the relay API, right? And I see this routes. I recognize that. Look, in the events relay API, it has the folder routes. And see, it's coming also from image routes. Image routes. And we see what message was printed out. Received request. Received request. This is where it's being logged. And yeah, that's where it's being logged. Uh, that basically can help you figure out what's the trace of every single thing that happened, so you can figure out where things went wrong without having to run the code over and over again and debug. So you just look at the logs, trace back on every single thing that was happening, and figure out where things went wrong. That's why logs are very helpful. Uh, yeah, that's it for logging.